I think I'm good.
And we are live. What is going on, everybody? Mike here from GTE slash. I don't know what I forget what we're broadcasting on the YouTube. So, yeah, joined as always by George. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Mike_Curlin. George is at Roto_Nino. I was just joking about it, how I use his old Twitter handle all the time when I search for him on Twitter. But George, what's going on, man?
What's up, man? Nothing much. Just here we have. It's been a minute since we recorded, but happy to sit here with you this morning and talk some baseball.
And not to mention a live stream at that. We never live stream anymore.
Right?
Somehow we're going to screw this up. I can't wait. I already screwed up the intro. So, I mean, it's only going to get better from here, right? You can only go up. But today we are discussing, we're going to focus more on the 12 teamers. So we're going to look at sleepers for 12 team leagues. We're kind of just going right into that round, right around that pick 300 ADP, which gives you that reserve rounds. And by reserve rounds, I mean, these are guys that you're pretty much drafting to your bench. And these are deeper 12 team leagues because we're focusing on OC ADP, which is online championships. So for those who play in NFBC formats, you're very aware OCs are 12 teamers. It's it includes a middle infielder, a corner infielder. So there's about, I think it's 23 spots per team. So around 275, top 275 get picked. So we're going to bump it down to about pick 300 and focus on that 300 to 400 range, maybe 500. Because the next episode, we're going into our favorite players post pick 500, really getting you guys ready for those deeper leagues, the DC types, the draft and holds, where we're going to really dive into those last 10 rounds, essentially. Because I feel like that's very valuable. There's enough arguing over first round picks on this in this podcast world, and there's enough of the other content covered, including positional previews, which we have kind of moved on from because, let's be honest, there are a lot of places, a lot of people doing really good work with positional previews. I don't think we need to be so repetitive and do them as well.
Yeah.
And we agreed on that. Plus, we don't podcast nearly enough like we used to. So we're just going to focus on giving you guys names of players not as commonly spoken about. Maybe this episode might have some common names because I have a couple guys that I just want to talk about because I really like them where they're going. But that's enough of me rambling. So before we get into it, though, we got a few shameless plugs. Obviously, check us out on the YouTube. If you're watching us live, that's great. If you are listening to us on the recording, check us out on YouTube, where we're going to start doing more of these live streams. It's youtube.com/@GTE Fantasy. And then you have our Patreon, patreon.com/GTE Fantasy. I know, real original. It's super hard to find us, right? And lastly, this episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. If you are looking to start playing some best balls, just dabbling into fantasy baseball as a whole, leagues are as cheap as $5. Doesn't get much better than that. And they will give you a deposit match guarantee up to $100 if you're a first time depositor. So use promo code GTE and you can get that bonus. Now, GTE is obviously everything. So it's really simple. If you know GTE, you know us, you support our content, we appreciate it. It goes a long way. Let's talk about strategy when it comes to building your bench. It was something I added to it last minute, but I feel like there should be a strategy. When you are drafting a bench, you shouldn't just be drafting willy-nilly. You shouldn't be drafting random players. I really do believe in having a strategy when attacking your bench players in shallower formats or in any format with a waiver wire. Do you have a strategy that you like to employ as you go towards these final picks in your draft?
Yeah, if we're talking like shallower league with waiver wire, I've been doing like a lot of draft and holds, DCs and stuff. So it's a completely you're looking at a completely like different kind of player when you're filling out your bench and stuff in those formats. But yeah, like in a 12 team league, like we're going to be looking at the online championship ADP today. You want to shoot for upside at least. I typically like to shoot for upside because they in leagues like that, it is easier to cut a player. Replacement level is much better, that you could find on the waiver wire. So I do kind of like to shoot for the upside there when looking at these picks, like after the 270s, where you're filling out your bench.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I look at it like I want to beat the waiver wire, so to speak, especially early in drafts. So if you're drafting right now in these early formats where the waiver wire isn't going to be open for a little bit, but you can see these guys jumping up in spring training via performance, injury, earning a spot in a starting lineup. I'm trying to beat the rush. So I'm treating the bench like a way to beat the waiver wire the first couple weeks. When it comes to pitching, same thing. I'm trying to either get guys I think could be breakout candidates early in the season that should, make a difference to your team. Maybe a guy that I think can just jump and be a guy that's like beyond a 2-start option. Or if I just want to beat the rush to the waiver wire for 2 start pitchers, I will stash a guy right at the end of my draft, a guy that I think, okay, he's set up to be a 2-starter in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So I'm trying to basically beat the waiver wire. That's how I target this. I'm trying to target upside players, but also beat the waiver wire. I feel like it goes hand in hand, because if you can get those guys on your team to start the year, you're saving precious fab dollars or waiver priority early on, and you can reallocate that priority or waiver wire dollars elsewhere as the season goes along to attack different needs as needed. So that's how I'm looking at it. And the types of targets, obviously everyone builds up their benches different. I tend to be a little more pitcher heavy, just because I think it's easier to find offense in some of these leagues. And as you'll see, like a lot of my picks today, I have 4 hitters and 2 pitchers. I think we each have 6 names. And pitchers, not that they're harder to find, but I think hitters in a shallower league are more plentiful, especially in positions like the outfield, where outfield is said to be shallow this year. But as you get deeper in the drafts, maybe the higher end talent is shallow, because I find myself loving like a handful of outfielders at the end of these drafts, and even into DCs, which next week we'll talk about. A lot of my picks outside the top 500, like around that 300 to 500 range, I'm realizing outfield is easy to fill in terms of depth right now. So I don't necessarily want to target outfielders, even though I have, I think, 2 of them on this list today. Outfield is one of those positions where it goes from being shallow to deep relatively quick, depending on which part of the draft you're looking at. And I think that overall positional scarcity is overblown. I've been guilty of it in the past. I've argued for it, and I think it's a bad argument now. More I've educated myself on it. So, sorry to those who I've besmirched in terms of saying that you know what you're talking about, because it was me that I was just speaking out of a place of ignorance. I apologize. But positional flexibility is important in certain drafts, and where a player plays does matter. But I think there's overemphasis as a whole in the industry on it that needs to be we need to start speaking out against it a little more, because a lot of the better players, a lot of the big name analysts have already done that, but people still don't necessarily hear them, even though they're saying it and they've been saying it. And I'm talking about guys like, I know Zimmerman's very vocal about positional scarcity not really being a thing. I think Rob Silver has mentioned it. I know I've heard very smart people mention it, and yet it hasn't caught on as much as it should. So I'm going to try to spread the word as well, the gospel, if you will, that positional scarcity isn't real for the most part.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That's something I've looked at a little less and less this year, where it's like, I know what stats I need to get, and where they come from doesn't really matter all that much to me. It's just how I'm building that my roster through that in any particular draft. I'm just looking to get the stats that I need.
And I think that goes with us incorporating more of projection systems into our prep now than ever before, and I think that's something we also overlooked. I didn't realize how much runs it. Like, I would always look at a player and I was really good at dictating skill set. Like, okay, this player has upside for running, this player can hit home runs, and batting average was kind of like, you can look at a player, and if you look at them enough, you get an idea of what to expect in terms of batting average on the high end, the low end, the median. But runs and RBI factor into that a lot, and I feel like it's something those are 2 stats I overlooked, almost like wins for pitchers. They matter, but they're harder to predict. And I think projection systems, along with the other stats, I think projection systems, having them included in your process is very important. But I don't think I realized that how well they do that compared to me, and it made me under and overvalue certain players in years past. So I think that's the big value and the big takeaway I got from projection systems this year, incorporating them, is that it helped open my eyes to other players in other ways that maybe I wasn't before for one reason or another. And it's been fun, and I think it's been a good addition to my my process, because my player analysis I always felt strong about, but not incorporating projections enough, I think, was something that was holding me back without me realizing it at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, that's enough on that. So we can talk about the players now, I guess. People probably want to know some of the players. I'll just kick it off. I'm going to buy back in. A lot of it's on discount, but we're talking about upside. We're talking about a guy who could be a difference maker if it clicks. Jared Kelenic, familiar name. Everyone knows who Kelenic is, but he's going at, let's see. And we looked at OC ADP since the first of the year. There's I think there's been 14 drafts. 319 overall, so outside top 300. And he's more of an obvious name, but people might not realize that Kelenic is he's still like 23 years old, I think it is. And a guy who's so young with such potential and upside why are we dismissing them? And I think we as an industry are very dismissive of prospects who don't work out right away. Remember how quick everybody kind of turned on Vlad, even though Vlad was still getting drafted highly year after year. People were already counting him out because of one failed rookie season, and it was like, I don't know if we should do that. But Kelenic, even with the struggles at the major league level, he still has a power speed combination that is very highly sought after. And we saw him actually build on the max exit velocity was, it increased last year from his rookie year or from his first year. So did the barrel rate. We saw a 13.6% barrel rate for Kelenic. We saw a 114 max exit velocity. The sprint speed isn't really great, but who cares if he's actually running, and he stole 5 bases. He stole 14 total last year between AAA and the majors. So we know he can steal bases, and this team will let him run. I don't know why we are so quick to dismiss what was a top overall prospect, not just in his system, but a top overall prospect in baseball. He had to deal with 2020 developmental issues there. I think has affected minor leaguers more than we realize. And Kelenic is just, again, that talent. You bet on the skills, the raw skills there. And one thing that might benefit him this year is the banning of the shift. Kelenic was a guy who was shifted against like 85% of the time, roughly. And he had a 125 BABIP last year against it. With the xWOBA was only 277, but it was still 51 points above his actual WOBA on the shift. Strikeouts are an issue. We've never seen the strikeouts be an issue in the minor leagues, and usually there's a decent players that have good plate discipline in the minors tends to carry over to the majors a little better than what it has for Kelenic. So I don't know if there's a little bit of pressing there, a little bit of he feels like he has that chip on his shoulder, he has to prove something. But I think Kelenic, a lot of that is kind of wearing off as people are kind of quick to just kind of dismiss him already. I think we haven't seen the best out of him yet, and I'm willing to give him a shot, especially in these reserve rounds. So Jared Kelenic's the first guy on my list.
Yeah, I haven't gotten there yet with Kelenic just because I've maybe done 2 or 3 12-team drafts. So in the 15 teamers that I'm doing, he's got to be like your 4th or 5th out. He's got to be in an outfield starting spot.
That's why it's tough. That's why we're doing. That's why we're focusing on 12 teamers today, and next week we're gonna do 15s because you and I play more 15s, and I have a hard time targeting them in 15s because I'd rather him be a reserve round pick. So in 12s, it's a perfect upside play, whereas in 15s, it's like the upside is being factored in maybe a little too heavily, but at the same time, it's a skill set thing too. I get it. I understand the price regardless, honestly.
Yeah, and I can get on board as a reserve pick for sure because like you said, I mean. He's one of these post hype guys that can certainly you can't write the book on him yet. My first guy I'm going to talk about going at 305. I like Carlos Carrasco as you're getting him as your 6th or 7th pitcher. They're in 12 teamers. I mean last year wasn't so bad. I mean 152 innings, 3.97 ERA. The underlying numbers look just as good as basically what he has been throughout his career. 3.53 FIP, 3.45 xFIP. He even got a little unlucky with the 1.33 whip. It came with the 0.337 BABIP. So I think Carrasco's just could be just one of these solid reserve starters that you could throw into your starting pitching lineup. So look at the underlying numbers: 17.2% strikeout minus walk rate, 12.9% swinging strike rate. I mean, I like Carrasco. You're not going to find very many pitchers with these metrics going at this point in the draft. So, as a reserve pick that you could throw into your lineup at any given week, I like him here. I think you're muted.
I love muting myself. I love that. It's such a rookie mistake, and I do it so often as if I haven't been doing this stuff for 4 or 5 years now. Yeah, Carrasco's a guy that I feel like always has those runs of relevance, always has the skill set, but then just can't stay healthy. But in the reserve rounds, 2 start weeks, great team context. There's a lot of reasons to buy in and believe still. And of course, I'm surprised with the New York bias in general, allowing him to still fall this far. New York people, there's a lot of fantasy people that love themselves some New York Mets, and I'm surprised the hype hasn't gotten there yet, just because of that. Don't mind me. I'm a host. I'm drinking while I'm hosting. That's terrible. All right. And for those watching, we have more views on Twitter than we do on YouTube. If you want to ask any fantasy questions, don't forget you can hop on the YouTube and actually ask them. Or if you want, or if you have pushback, feedback, anything you want us to respond to, we can get to. but only on the YouTube because Twitter doesn't allow that for whatever reason. Next guy on my list is going to be Matt Mervis of the Cubs. And it shouldn't be a shocker, but obviously the ADP has fallen, but it's fallen to a place where I want all the shares now. I've drafted them twice. I've drafted more now since all the, Hosmer signing, the Mancini signing. Mervis is not on the 40 man. So why am I drafting him? Because it's not going to take much for him to get on the 40 man. Hosmer is making, I think, minimum salary. He's not good. And I think Hosmer was purposely he was added before Mancini for depth. I think Mancini is going to be more of a DH outfield and platoon partner over at first base with Hosmer, but I don't think both of them are enough of a reason to stop Mervis. I think Mervis, you love what you see in terms of the approach. We're talking about a guy with a 20% or better strikeout rate at both levels. At the last 2 levels last year. He played 3 levels last year, hit 36 home runs, I think it was. 36 home runs. So the power is legit. He has a pull heavy 5-ball approach, which will play up in today's game. And just that plate discipline really encourages me. And the fact that his plate discipline improved at every level. It didn't get worse as he went up. It improved at every level last year. There's a lot to like there. And if he can keep that going into spring training, early in the minors, if he starts off in the minors, I think he's an early call-up, and that alone warrants a reason to stash him early on. Plus, we'll get more information. This could change. He's a guy that could easily be off this list if we get word that he's going to spend he might be a June or July call-up. I don't know if he's worth stashing that long, but in today's day and age, where in the climate we're in, where power is thought to be scarce, we know he brings that power upside, and Mervis brings a bat that could easily be a middle lineup bat on a team that's going to be better than people might think, even especially after the additions they've made. And they're a team that wants to compete. So if Hosmer's as bad as we expect him to be, if Mancini doesn't bounce back quite to what we expect, Mervis could have a strong start in the spring training / WBC / early in the minors, and he'll be on the 40 man and called up in no time. So this is more of an upside play, less potential. Obviously, I think Kelenic has more of a fantasy, the skill set you want in terms of being that 5 category guy, or at least the main power speed categories, because obviously both these guys are probably going to end up in the back halves of their lineups respectively to start. But ultimately, I want guys who could be difference makers. I think Mervis and Kelenic offer that potential on your bench, especially if you're drafting right now where you don't know which direction these guys are going to head entering spring, and both could easily be vaulted up into, beyond your bench spots. These guys could be drafted as starters again, especially Mervis was being drafted as a corner infielder in leagues prior to the signing. So all it takes is one Hosmer DFA, which isn't out of the question, to get Mervis back into that mix. So I'm taking advantage of the discount right here, essentially. And I like the price, and I like the potential, and I like the skill set. That combination has me in on Mervis at his price right now.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's a good call.
Who's your next guy?
My next guy I got here, another pitcher. I like getting some pitchers in this range. Steven Matz. We saw, just a season ago, he had a good year with Toronto, 150 innings, 3.82 ERA. Joined the Cardinals, and but before he went out with a shoulder impingement. His first 37 innings, he had a 6.03 ERA. He hit a couple blowups there, but the underlying numbers look just fine. I mean, 2.99 xFIP, 22% strikeout minus walk rate. Then he gets knocked out with the shoulder impingement, comes back for one start, throws a 5-inning, 7 strikeout, 2-run game against the Reds before I think it was an ankle or knee injury. Came back in September as a reliever, throwing the velocity stayed consistent. I think that's one thing that I'm gonna monitor this spring with Matz. But I think he could be a pretty good value here if he's reportedly 100% healthy going into spring. So I want to see where that velo is at, and if it stays consistent. He's got a good team context. He's going to be in line for some wins. He's got a good defense behind him. So I do like Matz here. Projection systems like him pretty good too. I mean, ATC, he's got 3.86. Steamer has him for 3.74. So yeah, I like Steven Matz here where he's going. I like the upside.
Yeah, I don't know. Steven Matz scares me. I think part of it is because of what he did to me last year when I bought in, and then I bought back in, and then he burnt. I don't know. You can have him. I'm gonna. There's a couple other guys there, but I don't think I have one guy here. I'll take over him, but I'm not going to get to him yet. First guy I'm going to talk about is Matt Brash of the Seattle Mariners. I love me some Matt Brash, and I know he was supposed to actually try to become a starter again and try to work his way back into the starting lineup, but I don't think we're going to get that, especially now with the WBC. We have Matt Brash actually being utilized as a reliever for Team Canada, I believe. So that's going to actually hinder that idea of him getting back to being a starter. But as a reliever, we saw how good he could be. And that's where I'm like, I don't know if I want him to start again. We saw him have a sub-2 FIP, the xFIP was almost a run higher, but still sub-3. The strikeout minus walk rate was 21.3% compared to 2.1% for Brash as a reliever compared to a starter. And we have Seawald and Munoz recovering from offseason surgeries, injuries, whatever you want to call it. So I think both will probably be ready by the season. But even if they're not ready, if they're slightly delayed for any reason, say they just have a slow start because they couldn't pitch through most of spring training properly, actual pitching, throwing and pitching are different things. I think Brash gets to be sneaky for some early season saves, but ultimately, I think Brash will just give us all around that solid, almost what we talk about every year. We find one or two names that give us like that middle reliever that can snipe some wins, get a couple saves. I think Brash could be that guy that gives me 3 to 5 wins and 3 to 5 saves and good ratios and strong strikeouts. And I find value in that in deeper formats. I understand shallow formats. We're talking about that with Brash, but I'm willing to take a shot on Brash early because of those other guys possibly starting the year a little slower behind. I'm willing to try to see if I can get ahead of that, maybe potential for like a handful of saves early on, and then dump him or hold on to him, see where it goes. Because if he could be like an Andrew Miller type and he's just coming in for the 6th, 7th, 8th round, those innings for a team in the Mariners that I think is going to be better than most people realize, or just as good as last year, which they were a playoff team last year. I think that he can have a lot of value in that role anyway. So Matt Brash is a guy I'm targeting based on the great stuff plus metrics, great overall numbers as a reliever, and a guy who can at least develop into a multi-inning guy and provide value in that way, and maybe snipe some of those wins and saves that we want so badly out of anybody, but especially a guy who with his potential where he's gonna be pitching for this team most of the time.
Yeah, I like. I'm a big fan there of Matt Brash. My next guy I got here going at 333. Got some upside at shallow third base position, but Yoan Moncada, I mean, he's still only 27 years old. I love the price here. I mean, going so late. Taking a look at his numbers, I mean, it's kind of well documented already, like the struggles he had gone through starting in 2020 with his bout with COVID. But you look at, going back to his 2019 season, his barrel rate was at 10.8%. That dropped to 6.2% in 2020, but it's kind of crept up, over the last couple seasons, 8.2% in 2021, 9.8% last season. And that was actually all the way up to 11% in the second half last year for Yoan Moncada. And we saw him kind of tap into some more power down the stretch. So I don't hate it here. I'm not so sure about like a complete bounce back to like his 2019 levels. I don't think he's going to hit 315 or anything like that. But I definitely think that we could see, a good power resurgence from Moncada, and he's going to hit, he's going to play every day for the White Sox as long as he can stay on the field and hit in a pretty good spot that Roster Resource has him currently slotted in the 5th spot. I don't think he falls too much further than that. So if he's batting 5th every day for the White Sox, and he could provide, maybe a 240, 250 average and 20 homers, throw in a couple steals, I think that'll play. So going, you could take him on your bench. If you're strong everywhere else, it's one of those things where, the whole positional scarcity thing we talked about, like if you are strong everywhere else and you throw in a Yoan Moncada as a corner bat, or, even as a third baseman, and he's got that 20 homer upside, I mean, I think you can't really go wrong there. So I do like Moncada going at his price right now.
Yeah, we're talking about a guy that still has potential, Moncada, overall in terms of like his skill set. A guy that was once he's removed from telling us all he wanted to steal 20 or 30 bases last spring training and never stole any, I don't think, last year. So that was a little frustrating, but we're talking about a guy that all it takes is one injury to vault him up the order. Benintendi isn't known for staying healthy. Tim Anderson's not known for staying healthy.
Right.
Either's Moncada sometimes, but Moncada, we're talking about a guy with a little bit of power, a little bit of speed, And in September, October, that last month of the season, we saw the 5 home runs, 2 stolen bases. I think he had like a over 800 OPS. I'm trying to do the math real quick, or close to it. But 109 WRC plus, which is 9% better than league average. But the reason why I thought it was worth mentioning is because maybe he figured something out. Moncada, although the walks were like non-existent, he struck out just 23.9% of the time compared to 27% of the time. Walk rate was, like I said, about cut in half, but it was because it was more aggressive at the plate. And
right. And I was just gonna touch on that because he was more aggressive. You saw he's last couple seasons he was much more passive with his swing rates down, but last year his 47% swing rate was right in line with in 2019. So I do like that as well, that he was more aggressive.
Yeah, and it happened heavily in September because going back to that, we mentioned the strikeout rate and walk rate both dipped, but that was because it was by design. The ground ball rate was only 24.7%, so he increased the fly ball rate and swing rate. So again, it goes back to Moncada being more aggressive. Contact rates improved. He had 93% Z contact that month, and the hard hit and barrel rate improved as well. Again, not being so passive. Maybe pitchers adapt to that and aren't maybe throwing them so many first pitch strikes, maybe not throwing them so many fastballs, early in the strike zone, early in the count, whatever it might be. So that there's always a game of cat and mouse here for pitchers and hitters. But I don't want to ignore that late season run for Moncada, because if he finally decides he wants to change his approach, it might benefit him and make him be closer to that player we once thought or knew him to be or could have been. So Moncada's a guy that I'm with you. He was actually going to make my list. That's why I have all this information ready. I had all the information written down because he was going to make my list, but you told me he was on yours. I pivoted to another guy that I love in Max Kepler. And if you've listened to me talk, or if you follow me on Twitter enough, Kepler is the guy that I'm just going to get all of if I can. He's a guy I don't even know where he's going in OCs. He's probably like he's one of your last picks in reserve rounds for OCs. He's going 360. So yeah, he's actually going outside the top. Like 360 is I think where it ends in terms of like the overall player pool. So I don't think he's being picked. He's only been drafted in one OC for reference. So yeah, he's barely getting picked. But he's a guy that I will take with the last pick in most cases. He's a guy that I'm heavily in on for draft champions formats, so I should have probably saved him for that. But Kepler's a guy that 90 last year, Kepler had a 90% Z contact rate. He has overall plus plate discipline. It's always been a strength of his. Doesn't strike out a ton, walks plenty. He hits the ball hard. You want hard hit metrics, because the reason why this matters is because he pulls the ball so much. He actually had a ground ball line. He had a 296 WOBA on ground balls and line drives. It pulled into the shift last year. Or hit into the shift, I should say, with a 381 X WOBA. We're talking about it was 90-point difference basically between his WOBA and X WOBA on line drives and ground balls hit into the shift last year. The shift is going to be banned. That won't be a direct correlation, but he's one of those guys that's going to gain heavily from the shift, I believe, as a left-handed hitter. And because of that, Kepler's a guy that I'm taking that chance on because he's going undrafted in shallower leagues. So he could be a guy you add to your watch list if you play in really shallow leagues. But we also know he's been a guy who's been like a top 120, 130 pick before. So we know that potential's there. If he could return even close to being that guy that was that fringe 150-ish overall pick, that's still a huge amount of return on investment here. So it's a matter of I'm betting on that skill set of having some power, having the ability to make a ton of contact, while also betting on the shift band assisting him in returning back to closer to what he used to be as a player for fantasy purposes. Plus, we know when he does play, he typically hits at the top of the order. So we're talking about a guy who can hit top 5 in a really strong Twins lineup that people might not realize is as good as it is. And they got rid of Arias, who was a top of the order bat. I think Kepler might be on a weak side, might be on a strong side of platoon. So the play appearances might be maxed at like 550-ish, which is still, but again, where you're getting him, you can stream him on weeks where he has a heavy, right-handed pitching lineup. And I'm not really worried about this. So that's fine. He sits versus lefties. I really don't care because you're getting a guy who can still hit 25 plus home runs, hit for a decent average, and benefit from the shift. And he just hits the ball hard and has good plate discipline. I'm a sucker for that. It's a skill set I really enjoy in late round guys. And I feel like we haven't seen we might have seen the best of Max Kepler in the past, but the last few years, I think the shift has really hindered him. Among other things, I think we see him return to at least what he was. And I think that where you're able to draft him, getting that is still a net positive.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Kepler. He did. He's definitely going to benefit from the shift ban. We'll see, if his batted ball profile as far as like those ground balls stick. But yeah, I'm with you on Kepler. A lot of times I find myself, picking him and my next guy actually actually pretty similar. My next guy is Mike Yastrzemski, also taken in only one OC, but I want to say he's probably like one of my most drafted players, Yastrzemski.
Yeah, Kepler's one of mine. That's why I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and own it now. So for better or for worse, if you draft with me, Kepler actually last draft was one of the first drafts I haven't gotten Kepler. I think that was by design though, just because. I mean, not that he's going early or anything, but it was just one of those things where it's like, all right, let me take someone else. And I think I forgot who I took instead. I kind of regret it just because I'm so in on Kepler. His price tag isn't going to hurt me if I took him in 100% of leagues, honestly. But I changed it up a little bit here and there anyway.
Yeah, and even
Anyway,
sometimes I'll leave like my last like starting outfielder spot open and just take like
a bunch of these
two,
guys.
three guys. Yeah, in this range, I'll take Yastrzemski and Kepler. And just seeing, who works out. But I do really like Yastrzemski here. You're not going to find very many guys going this late that are projected for, 550 plus plate appearances. You kind of touched on that with Kepler too. Yastrzemski, should play every day. Probably going to hit near the top of the lineup against right-handers. I don't see him leaving the lineup against lefties. He has a very similar stat line against left-handers as Michael Conforto. Actually, a little bit better than Michael Conforto against lefties through his career. So I could see, and the Giants are known for like putting players in the best position, to succeed. We've seen with all of their platooning. Conforto, having missed the better part of the last 2 seasons, I do think that maybe that he might be the one who, sees a little bit more of a strong side platoon with Austin Slater moving to center against lefties, and maybe Yastrzemski going to a corner where his defense will excel there. And I mean, the Giants could use all the defensive help they can get. I don't think Yastrzemski comes off the field, so maybe he hits lower in the lineup against lefties, but I don't think he's going to leave it. And just looking at, I mean, as far as like the metrics go, I mean, he's been as consistent as they come since his debut in 2019. Always shown good plate discipline. His strikeout rate has hovered, 26% in 2019, 24%, 24%, 25%. You look at his barrel rates, 10%, 10%, 10%, 11% last year. Hard hit rates, 42%, 42%, 39%, 42%. I mean, it's been so consistent. And yeah, even like his zone, he's actually raised his zone contact rate every season, 81, 82, 84, 88% zone contact rate last year. Now, he has been someone who also hurt by the shift. First couple seasons, he had, inflated BABIPs, 325 and 370. We knew that he wasn't a 297 hitter that he was in 2020, or even a 272 hitter that he was in 2019. So we, there was going to be regression in that BABIP, but that's come all the way down to 254 in 2021, 261 last year. It has coincided with a rise in shift rate. He's been shifted a lot more the last 2 seasons. And with that, we've seen him also hit more fly balls. So maybe, getting shifted more has changed his approach, where he's raised his fly ball rate, raised his pull rate. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think, that's something that's probably intentional. And so we'll see, if that approach changes this coming year. I think he's going to be helped by the shift ban regardless. But maybe if he's not pulling as many fly balls this year, we see that BABIP kind of come back up. And with that 11, consistent barrel rates and hard hit rates, I think we could see, a 240, 250 batting average from Yastrzemski is possible with 20 homer power. He's going to score, good amount of runs, scored 73 runs last year in 558 plate appearances. Because he does get on base. And then he's also going to, he's also somebody who I think, he's in that 5 stolen base range. Can we see, 9, 10 stolen bases from Yastrzemski this season? I mean, he's 9 for 10 on base paths in the last 2 seasons. And Gabe Kapler recently at the Giants, Fan Fest, kind of touched on the rule changes and did say that, base running was going to be emphasized, that, steals were going to be a factor with the new rules. And so I think, Yastrzemski could be somebody who maybe goes from these 4 to 5 steals the last 2 seasons to 7, 8, 9 steals. You could definitely see that. So I really like where Yastrzemski's going here. and I think he's going to end up being a pretty good value.
I got burned by him, and I just haven't been able to get back in on him after getting burned, after buying in after the breakout, and then it didn't continue, and I'm just scorned, like a scorned lover. You're picking guys that just have burned me in the past that I don't know if I want to do it to myself again. So I'd rather do it with my own guys. I'd rather buy it back into my own guys that have hurt me twice. But a guy that I'm in on, my number 5 guy here is Luis Garcia of the Nationals. You have to emphasize which team, Luis Garcia, because there's like 15 of them. But Luis Garcia of the Nationals, the hitter. Last year between AAA and Major League Baseball as MLB time, we saw him combine for 15 home runs and 6 stolen bases. And although he was, perfect 3 for 3 in the minors, he was 3 for 4 in the majors. However, he was 3 for 4. He was 3 for 4 to finish the year. Like, it sounds like I'm trying to say this right. He had 3 out of 4 for stolen bases. I can't do this. I can't do the math. So he stole 3 bases last year. And I remember, I think it was like, I think he only got caught once in the second half is what I'm trying to say here. And 3 out of the 4 stolen bases came in the first half. So it's like he improved at the major league level in the second half with stolen bases is what I'm trying to get at after all that mumble jumble to say that. But Luis Garcia improved on his ability to steal bases at the major league level last year. Plus you have the rule changes, the base changes. I think he's a guy that if he did improve towards the end of the year, we can see that carry over. So we know stolen bases are part of his skill set. We know he has some power potential, 91st percentile max exit velocity, and we saw him hit 15 home runs last year between the 2 levels. So you have those 2 right there. You have the power and speed skill set we all like. Not to mention Luis Garcia has a clear path to playing time for the Nationals. Bad team, doesn't matter. He can hit his way up the lineup, but regardless, he should have full run is what I'm getting at here. So you have playing time, you have skill sets you target for fantasy purposes. What's there not to like? And there's already reports that Luis Garcia is actually working towards being more selective this offseason, already working on his approach. So you got to love any type of player with top prospect pedigree for this team that, is taking has that type of work ethic. I think work ethic is something you can't quantify in the numbers, but at least it gives you reason to buy into why a player can improve especially a young player with his type of skill set. And, he was a top prospect for this team. Putting all that together, I'm just really liking where I'm getting him. He also has just the cherry on top for Luis Garcia is the dual position eligibility. I think it's second base, shortstop, 2 positions that shortstop kind of falls off a cliff, and second base, although deep, that lacks, elite options at the top. So I think that Garcia can be a guy that might pop at second base compared to like others going around that range, but also provides upside at shortstop where that cliff falls off. Maybe he can help ease that fall off a little bit. So Garcia is a guy that I'm just targeting for all the reasons I stated, but a lot of it's just skill set, opportunity for playing time, and the positional eligibility is just that cherry on top I really like.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, he's still only 22 years old.
Again, so people forget. It's like Kelenic. People just kind of forget these prospects are still young and developing.
Yeah. I would love to see him get that launch angle up because I think that's the missing piece. That and a little bit more plate discipline. But when you got a guy this late, where you can look at the skills there and see the path to growth. I mean, I like it. I think it's a good one.
Do we ever disagree? I mean, I guess Matz was kind of a disagreement. I just didn't have anything really ready to fire back a full-on argument, but I guess I'm just not in on Matz. We do often are on the same page, which leads to a boring podcast for some people, because I do think people enjoy bickering, people enjoy arguing, and rightfully so, because I feel like the best conversations come from that. But you and I tend to be on a lot of the same players. So I'm going to formulate an opinion against Matz next week just because at this point. But yeah,
we're gonna have to just go through our rankings and find the guys that we differ on the most, and just do a debate pod, and we're gonna go at it.
Probably, but here's the thing: we're both gonna present arguments that I think that each of us will respect from one another, and be like, "I get it, but I'm just not buying it." It's pretty much all we're gonna have. It's always gonna be the pushback. It's like, I get it, but I just don't think we're gonna see that growth. Like if you said, all you had to say is I see the tools there for Garcia, but I don't believe in the growth. I'm not betting on him growing as a prospect. And that would be the only argument, because the tools, I like to think that we present arguments, or we present facts and numbers to back our reasoning to a point where you really need a strong set of numbers to help push back. And a lot of times when we present the argument, it comes with so much information behind it. It's hard to really argue it fully without just kind of going with like part of it's just my gut feeling. Like I don't buy it. I'm just not buying the same thing you're presenting, but I get it. So that's why like, we're boring. We don't have. We need a third person that's just where's Simeone? I hate that guy.
I was just gonna say. I
need Simeone. If Simeone was here, yes, there you go. There's my antichrist, so to speak, my anti-Curland. Yeah, Simeone and I. That's the guy. I just even if I agree with him, I find ways to argue with him. I just it's fun. Anyway, so yeah, me and you will stick with being the good guys here.
Yeah.
So you're on your next guy. I'm so confused where we're at right now. I think I have one more. You have two more, right?
Yeah, I had an extra one thrown in here, but my next guy, and I think my next guy I really like David Peterson. I feel like he's someone who, I mean, if the Mets hadn't made all the moves that they made, if they hadn't signed Verlander, if they hadn't brought in Senga, if they hadn't brought in Jose Quintana, he's someone that would be going much, much earlier. But I'm actually glad that his price has remained suppressed because, I mean, I think he's going to get an opportunity. I mean, you look at that rotation. There's so much risk up and down. You got two guys, approaching. Well, you got Verlander who just hit 40. Scherzer approaching his 40s. I did mention the upside with Carrasco, but I mean, he's another one who's battled multiple injuries. So I do like that the price is still suppressed for David Peterson because he did a lot of good things last year. He made a lot of growth. I really liked what I saw. They kind of had him going up and down through the minors and they would call him up to make some spot starts, but he did get in 105 innings with a 3.83 ERA, 3.31 xFIP, 12.8% swinging strike rate. A lot of good stuff to like about David Peterson. So I mean, you look at the walk rate. It could definitely use some improvement there, but the skills are strong. The skills are strong here for Peterson, and as late as he's going, I think there's a good amount of upside here with him if he could take just another step there. So I do think that there could be an opportunity opening up, whether he takes a spot in the rotation or if it comes through injury. But he's someone that I like grabbing, at very, very late here in drafts, just because of the skills.
All right. Yeah, it's just hard to argue these players here because it's all a lot of it's preference, and there's gonna be a lot of names that we don't even talk about that also deserve being mentioned. So maybe we'll do a part 2 here because there's a lot of players. It's like I even scrubbed a few names from here because there's gonna be another video coming out on YouTube with Matt Brash is gonna be on both video this live stream and the video, but I didn't want to include more than just him. I didn't want to include that name twice. So it's one of those things where we're at a point where there's so many players with upside and potential. It's just frustrating. You can't pick them all. Last guy for me is a guy that I've been on before. See, I'm biased to my scorned lovers, my past lovers that I've fallen for that have burned me. I'm prone to revisiting and trying this again. And I'm giving a second chance to Aaron Savale. I can't quit him. The second half, we saw him sustain the highest usage of his cutter and curveball. So there was a little bit of a pitch mix change. Cut the sinker down a little bit from the prior 2 months, ending, to end the year. And with the changes in pitch mix, we also saw overall the K- walk rate improve from 23.4% up from 15.4% in the first half. So Savale saw better success with the strikeouts and walks. It also was backed by the fact that he posted an above average O swing and above average swing strike rate. Two things, he's inducing more swing strikes, more chases. That's great. You want that type of skill set. So the K- walk rate improving it makes sense because it has correlating underlying numbers elsewhere as well that kind of just go with it. And then, of course, the ratios were like a 3.35 ERA, a 3.41 FIP, xFIP was 3.01, and a 3.0 Sierra. It's ridiculous. The fact that he was able to actually have this production and it was all backed by the underlying numbers, it's not a fluke. And all this was like a run to 2 runs better than the first half. So all these improvements came with the change in his approach. You love to see tangible change actually correlate to change in production. Savale also improved his ground ball rate from like just over 10% in the first half to like under 4% in the second half, 46.4% to be exact in the second half. All in all, everything went right for him. Will there be some regression? Probably, most likely, but it's a player that has 6 pitches he could throw. It's a player that we've seen have success in small spurts before, and maybe he can finally put it all together. But we also know that the Guardians are like one of the best teams in terms of developing pitching. So, and Savale is a good pitcher. He lacks the stuff, but he's very good when it comes to hitting his spots and attacking the zone the way he likes to. It's almost like Bieber, that's how Bieber wins does his thing. He's more of like he's just a good pitcher more than overpowering stuff. So I think Savale, not saying he can be Bieber, but I think Savale could be more than just a streaming type, especially if what we saw in the second half carries over. And he's just kind of solid. And I really like the floor here late is what it is. And I think there's a little bit of ceiling, but more so I like the fact that I like the team context. I like the idea of having him for a 2-start week early in the season. And I would like to see if what he ended the season doing will continue into the next year. So Savale becomes that guy, final guy on my list here, of guys that's like, I really want to just take a shot, especially where he's going. And he's my final sleeper for shallower leagues.
Right on. Yeah, I still don't have any Savale myself. It's just kind of, I don't know, kind of missed him completely. But
if you like Matz, that would explain it too, because him and Matz are going right by each other. So if you have an idea of like, oh, I want to get Matz on my team, or you might just not be attacking starting pitching right there. I get that too. There's other guys like Bradish is another guy I really like that goes right in this range too. So it could be hard to target Savale because there's other upside players you might like more, or other players you might believe in more. And Savale is just kind of the meh option, because people see Savale and when you see Savale's name, you just think you know what to expect, when there could be more there than we're kind of giving him credit for. Or I like to believe that because I've been in on Savale since like 2020 and I refuse to give up. So it could be that. Could be a little bit of personal bias lingering in there somewhere.
Yeah, my last guy, this one might be a little bit more for DCs, but it's a save spec I really like going really late. It's Adbert Alzolay. I mean, I liked him a couple years ago, going into the 2021 season as a starter. Didn't really cut it there. It was really his struggles against lefties that kind of did him in as a starter that season. I mean, he had a solid 21.8% strikeout minus walk rate against right-handers, but that was basically cut in half against lefties. That really hit him hard. So then he. I think he missed some time, some time with injury. Came back as a reliever late in 2021 with an improved cutter that he started throwing to left-handers, and basically since the end of 2021, and then his he only had like 13 innings last year out of the pen, but he's been much better against lefties out of the pen, where his stuff plays up, where that cutter plays up with the better velocity. So I think he's someone who has just could be lights out in the bullpen. I'm not really a believer in Brandon Hughes. He has similar struggles, but it's right-handers that really crush him. So I don't think Brandon Hughes, I don't think without some major adjustments as well, I don't think that he is long for the closer job if it is him that starts as the closer. So I really like taking a chance on Adbert Alzolay, and he's someone who can maybe throw multiple innings at a time and give you, really good ratios, strikeouts. But I also don't see, I don't think the Cubs need him to do that, because they do have some guys that, they do have some guys that they can get into the rotation or that they can put in long relief. And you got Adrian Sampson, you've got Keegan Thompson, you've got another guy a lot of people really like, Hayden Wesneski. So I don't think they necessarily need Alzolay to throw multiple innings. And so if he's just lighting it up and he's just dominating out of the pen, and they need that ninth inning shutdown guy, I think that could definitely be Alzolay. I think the path is certainly there for him to eventually, kind of take over as closer. So he's someone that I like taking a lot. And again, this is probably a little bit more for DCs because we got to see all this kind of play out. And I'm not so sure that happens this spring. So maybe it's not such a great like shallower league pick, but yeah, in this range, I definitely like taking a chance on Alzolay.
Yeah, that's a good way to end the podcast because you're transitioning us into those deeper league names. But you mentioned Wisniewski, and I found him intriguing. The sub 3 ERA, I have notes on him because I looked at him just yesterday. So it's like, let me just talk about him as a bonus pick. 33 innings pitched last year at the major league level, sub 3 ERA, great. Obviously, the ERA indicator suggests he got lucky. No surprise with the sub 3 ERA. Above average K- walk rate of 19.7%. It was aided by very strong control that he flashed because he didn't walk many players, but his strikeout rate was like right around league, right around that 9% range, 9, 10, like less than 10%. So, but the swing strike percentage was 11.7%, and the O swing was 34.7%. So those were roughly league average, slightly above technically for I think the swing strike rate was like close. I think it's like 11.4 is league average for reference. So Wisniewski had like these skills of being like, I feel like it's just he's a solid back end of the rotation type, kind of similar to Savale. So I get it. I just feel like it was less of a path of a rotation spot initially. Or he's not going to be, or he has a shorter, maybe a shorter leash is what I'm getting at, honestly, because they have so many options in the back end of that rotation. It feels like the Cubs do, but the velo also leaves something to be desired. 93-mile-per-hour fastball. It's like, nah, but again, it goes back to reminding me of Savale because he also has like a 5-pitch mix that he can utilize. So he has like what he lacks in velo, he could probably, he has in having just that arsenal. So Wisniewski is a guy that's like, I'm really intrigued by, but it's like, if I like Justin Steele, I don't know how much I like Wisniewski because it's like, there's only enough room for so much mediocrity, potential for mediocrity on my team, so it's like Steele, Wisniewski, Savale, these are guys that I really like, but you have to I feel like I have to spread them around because there's just so much mediocrity there. I'm not sure which one I feel like can have the best chance for popping. And I don't know. So it's like, I like all of them, but like, I won't have more than one of them on any given team, if that makes any sense.
No, I totally get you.
But yeah, so that's a bonus name, bonus breakdown. A guy that I just happen to have notes on from yesterday because I'm going team by team looking at 40-man rosters right now and making notes on every player that could have some type of, potential to be fantasy relevant on 40-man rosters heading into the year. So more for like DC reason formats and more for the only type of leagues, NL, AL. So that's where I have like a lot of these random like names. Like Wisniewski's not a random name. He's actually kind of in this range, but it's why I have notes on him because I made it to the NL Central. I'm finishing up the NL Central because there's a lot more names than I realized, especially teams like the Pirates and stuff where there's so much playing time potential and so much mediocrity throughout the 40-man that's like, well, this guy, and this guy all have a chance for like these 2 spots. Which on your average team, those guys should not even be mentioned, but it's the Pirates. I digress. Obviously, you're getting an idea of what to expect from us because I just kind of posted the NL East over there on the Patreon. So NL Central's coming soon. You got your relief pitcher stuff on the Patreon. You released a huge article on things recently, a couple articles too. So like, yeah, the Patreon's going strong. Me, you, Simeo, and Bubba. Don't forget to check us out there, patreon.com/GT Fantasy. Underdog, use the GTE code if you're a first-time sign-up person. You get your your deposit match guarantee, and YouTube. For those who watch on YouTube, greatly appreciate. I pointed over here as if they could see my YouTube screen. Thanks for checking us out on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast, check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/@GTFantasy. That's going to do it for this episode. About an hour, not bad. I like these live streams. I forget that I enjoy live streams. We didn't get any questions today, but don't forget, if you hop onto the YouTube when we do these live streams, ask your question. We'll get to it during the show. So appreciate you listening.
Yeah, for sure.
You can check George out on Twitter at Roto_Nino, myself at Mike_Curland. And this was episode 186 of the Bases Loaded podcast. So we'll talk to you guys next week. I think. Maybe. Goodbye.